Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology with a Feel Good Astrology show. Another one. This is Wednesday, the 3rd of May. And today's show is all about the let me start that again. The Pluto Retrograde that we've got that's going on up until the 11th of October 2023. So it started a couple of days ago on the 1st of May. And it's not necessarily big news. Pluto goes retrograde every year for at least 5 or 6 months. So, chances are Pluto is retrograde more often than not, it's a kind of 50-50 split. Pluto's orbit is slightly different to the other planets. So, for instance, right now Pluto's in the sign of Aquarius. It's going to be there for 20 years. In its previous sign, Capricorn, it was there just for 15. So it has got an elliptical orbit as we observe it. So, the 5 to 6 months retrograde can change from sign to sign. But currently, Pluto's retrograde is approximately 5 to 6 months of every year. Now, there are moments when all of the outer planets are retrograde, and that can really spell a lot of anxiety for a lot of people. I wouldn't take it so much I wouldn't see it necessarily as something that is anxiety provoking. However, I do think it's worth exploring a little bit. But before we get going, I just want to welcome the people that are watching so far. So if you're new to the show, welcome. This is something we do Monday to Thursday for about half an hour or so. It's like an astrological hangout. It's just a safe place to go to learn about astrology, to share a few things. And to ask questions, really. It's just a hangout, essentially. And then on Sundays, we do a big show where I look at people's charts and do sort of pop-up readings. But every day I also do a forecast. So let's just do the forecast after I've welcomed the people that are commenting in the chat room, because it's always good to have people in the chat room. We've got Sarah Taylor joining us, dancing to that awesome music. Oh, wait, it's Louisa. Did you actually see me dance, Sarah? Because I actually do. I'm actually in the background. It gets me going. I deliberately looked for a bit of YouTube music. It's really wonderful, actually. When you're doing videos on YouTube, they've got a whole library of really good music that can be used. That's license free. And so I was looking for some kind of funk mix that would get me in the mood. So I'm glad you dance too. I'm glad it's not just me. I wonder who else dances to it when they hear it as well. It's such a good track. Facebook user, I'm on time. Hello. Don't know who it is. Oh. Bortard, it's Tabitha. Hi, Tabitha. Welcome. We've got Willie B joining us once again. I can't remember where you're from, Willie B, but I know you've told me each time. So please forgive me in my head. That's a little bit like a sieve. And Tabitha is also saying, you've been up to something. Rosy cheeks and tousled hair. You know what? I've been down the beach. It's not a very warm day today, but it's really nice. I've been walking on the beach with the kids, and I've been to a meetup, hanging out with other friends and whatnot. And I've literally just got back in. So my hair's a bit, whew. But hey, life is about living lots of different moments in each day. So I'm really grateful that I've had a bit of blast of sea air this morning. Anyway, let's bring on the forecast for tomorrow. What did I do there? There it is. And then we'll get on to Pluto and why it's useful to understand a little bit about Pluto retrograde in this coming period. So we're on to the 4th of May, which is actually my 10th wedding anniversary. Happy anniversary, Carl. Thank you for 10 years. And so this is quite an interesting one for me because we can celebrate the birthdays of ourselves and look at the birthday charts of it, but also we can look at the birthday chart of your wedding, which is obviously your anniversary. So we've got our anniversary on today. There's some interesting aspects, and the ones that really spring to mind for the 4th are we've got this lovely trine between Venus and the moon, which is really loving and kind and considerate. Then we've also got an opposition with Jupiter. And the moon and a Jupiter opposition can make our feelings very much unboundaried, unguarded, and very sort of expansive. So, there's a sort of romantic feel and a sort of expanded feel as well. Then we've also got the moon going into the sign of Scorpio, which is a day to, where people are feeling very deep about who they are and actually quite solid. And almost to mirror that energy, we've got a square to Pluto from the moon, which is really bringing up some deep-seated issues about control, like who's got the upper hand and who hasn't. Last thing then is we've also got this Neptune and Venus square, which really is showing us to be really careful who we're trusting. Sorry. So one of the things I would say is in this time when our feelings are really expanded and we're feeling romantic and hopeful, it's really, really easy to get out of balance with it and to see the best in people. What I see with these kinds of aspects mixed together is a feeling of maybe a little bit of we need more discernment. We need to take our rose-tinted glasses off and realize that actual true love or real life isn't about these huge, great, big, sweeping emotions. We need to actually sit in all emotions and value them all equally. And I think if you can enjoy every moment of this day without needing all of the altered emotions and slightly trippy emotions, then we don't need to have to control other people's behaviors. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're wanting to feel that sort of exalted feeling that today brings about, and then you're getting upset when that exalted feeling passes and trying to control it, it's a really an indication that we need to be okay with what is. So that's my absolute advice for the 4th, is to be okay with what is. Hope that's helpful. Wow. It's funny because I always forget what I'm saying in terms of my forecasts. So while I was listening to myself there, I did do a little shuffle of some cards. Now, these ones I haven't done live on screen. I'm not that familiar with them. I've had them for donkey's years. It's a tarot of the Dream Enchantress. And this is the Star. Now, the card Star, just to give you a little... from the person that wrote this, they're saying, shining in the dark, stars give guidance and promise wishes. When you teach someone to read the stars, to find hope and wisdom for themselves, you are exactly like a star walking the earth. Isn't that nice? So yeah, tune into your inner wisdom and help people and yourself find hope and wisdom for themselves. I love that. So there's the card for tomorrow as well. So Julian is saying, oh, happy Louisa and Carl Day. Yeah, that's for tomorrow, 10 years. Nubianet is saying, hola peeps. So stay away from the artsy guys, okay? Definitely. And Tabitha is saying, I said the other day that my life lesson is to discern emotional vampires. Well, that is quite some... That's quite something to do, Tabitha. Good luck with that one. It's funny how some people tend to pick them out more often than not. And I usually find in the charts of people that have got a lot of Pisces stuff and also Neptune in really key places, that often sort of shows up where you've got some kind of psychic interference, but also like a boundary issue, like where people are able to get through your defenses. So it'd be very interesting to know more about your chart, actually. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about Pluto. So, and Woolly Bee's just saying, no worries, I'm in Pennsylvania. Congrats on your anniversary. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, yeah, Pluto. Now, Pluto is known as the god of wealth in old traditional mythology. But if you, and he's also known as Hades, and is associated with the underworld. And I've done quite a few recordings. In fact, I've done a really big one about Pluto in Aquarius, which you might find useful. If you find some of this topic interesting, it's worth taking a look at that big recording I did quite recently. So it's in the Pluto playlist. Pluto shows us where control, like where we're trying to control things for survival issues. If we think about when manipulation first comes up in our lives, it's usually done in such a way for our survival. So for instance, I'm not somebody who subscribes to the sort of psychology of these kind of pop-up parent helpers, like baby whisperers and stuff that say, oh, that baby's manipulating you and this, that, and the other, that babies are somehow born manipulative. I mean, there is something in it. Like we are we are a species that seeks to be safe and to be comforted. And sure, we may learn to get that comfort in different ways if it's not forthcoming, but that's because of our ingenuity. And I don't tend to think of it so much as manipulation, though it's part of I guess it is a kind of fall from grace. It's a moment where we realize that maybe our survival isn't that safe and secure. And I guess it does show where we begin to try and find control. So you might find you might find a baby will start people pleasing, because when they're being pleasing to their parents, they get a bit more attention, and that can become definitely endemic in your personality. I know I've picked that up for sure. But there are 101 different ways that we can try and feel secure in our life and feel like we have control. Now, Pluto can also show up in our charts as something that is definitely trying to control and definitely trying to stop creativity. It's almost like a search for power and a search for wealth and a search for the absolute, which involves at some level crushing and stamping on other people and pushing other people out of the way so that you get everything. It's almost like a greed. And I don't think that's necessarily inbuilt in humans, but I think it's something that may come on in different people at different times according to the environment they're in. So Pluto really shows us quite starkly where other people are trying to control us and possibly stamp us down or manipulate us in a very sort of guilt thrower, guilt catcher way, which is not too far off what Tabitha was talking about. In fact, with these emotional vampires, that can definitely fit a Pluto pattern as well as a Neptune one. But Pluto is pretty big. And the reason I called this Psyche Switch as a title is like the psyche. I've seen different definitions of it, and here's just one I found on the internet earlier. All the elements of the human mind, both conscious and unconscious. Sigmund Freud would say it's the id, the ego, and the superego. So it's like the psyche is kind of like the whole package of different strategies and different ways of being. And so what Pluto is showing us is almost like the survival mechanisms that are alive in our consciousness and in our unconsciousness, mostly in our unconsciousness. And it's changing direction. So we've got this chance to look at ourselves, look at our survival, look at what control things we've got playing in our minds, and we can look at it from a new perspective. Now, the other reason why I've highlighted it today and decided to cover it as a subject is because when a planet appears to go backwards, it has a starting position, and it's almost like you're driving. Imagine you're in a car and you're driving up the road, and you're looking for somebody's house, and you think, okay, I need to go to number 8. Then you drive up to number 8. Then you realize the numbering's wrong, and actually you've overshot it, and you've got to number 20, and you think, okay, I've got to just reverse back, and you reverse back to number 8. But then you realize actually you needed number 10 after all, and you start moving forwards again. It's a bit like that with the planets. As we observe them from our position here, or as NASA, different, like the Swiss observatories and stuff, who look at the positions of them, what appears to happen from our viewpoint is the planets move forwards as part of their normal orbit, and then they shunt back as if they've overshot the mark, and then they stop, and then they go forwards again. And it's a little bit like a two-step dance, like 2 step forwards, 1 step back. And, things are appearing to move forwards all the time. Now, where Pluto moves back to, it moves back to the exact degree that Pluto was in at the time, date, and place of the Declaration of Independence. Okay. Now, to be fair, it was at that degree for quite some time. It wasn't just unique to that particular day. It moves back to where Pluto was, in 1776. So it feels like this Pluto retrograde has a lot of themes for America. So it feels like there is a shift back. Now, let me just actually bring a little bit of actual sort of visual stuff onto the screen so you can see the charts. And in fact, before I go any further, let's just see if we've got any other comments. No, not yet. So what we've got here, and in fact, I wanted to put this chart in. This isn't actually the retrograde chart, but I just wanted to put it in because I didn't want to forget about it. One of the things a lot of astrologers were talking about in 2018 and 2019 is a lot of astrologers were saying, oh, crikey, we've got Pluto and Saturn coming together and Jupiter at the same time. This could really change things. Now, if you've got an eagle eye here, I don't know if I can increase this. Hang on, let's see. I've never done this before live on screen with, that went wrong. Hang on. So we're on to, oops. Maybe I won't mess around with that so much. Oh, but I'm going to try it again. So because God loves a trier, right? So we've got Pluto here at 23, 24 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. And then we've got Saturn here at 23 degrees and Jupiter at 11 degrees. Now, Jupiter moves quite fast. It's almost like the hands of a clock. If you imagine you've got an hour hand, a minute hand, and a second hand, and they all have different speeds, but all of a sudden, all three of them align in a certain point. Well, and they didn't align all exactly at the same time, but within a few degrees of each other, they all came together, starting from the beginning of January towards the end of February. They all came into a series of alignments. And you know, any astrologer worth their salt would be looking ahead at that back in, well, I was looking ahead of it back in, you know, like 2015, thinking, oh my goodness, this sounds like it's going to be quite extreme. And of course, it coincided with this conjunction. It coincided with all the stuff that started happening to do with COVID and the phenomenon, that's what I'm going to call it, the phenomenon of COVID, because for some people, they didn't even experience it, actually. You know, they didn't actually get COVID. Some people believe they did. There were tests that said that you did get it, even though there are also tests that said actually you were being tested for flu and other things. And there's so much controversy around it. So, you know, it is a reality and also it's an idea. Now, Pluto is, like I said, the god of wealth and control and power, but he's also known as the god of death. And he's like the god of the underworld. So it's all about death and dying and recycling. And then Saturn is like an enforcer. Saturn is like, with his rings, he's like the jailer. He'll put you in jail. And Saturn looks at responsibility and making people pay for responsibility. He's a teacher. He's a hard taskmaster. Sometimes he can be a benevolent parent, but more often than not, Saturn can be a bit of a meanie, especially in a conjunction with Pluto, and especially in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign of big business and governments and banking and insurance, and in the corporatocracy, the idea of, hang on, I don't just want to have the best hotel in this area. I want to have the best hotels throughout the whole world. How can I do that? Oh, I know. I'm going to buy up this chain and this chain and this chain. So like Capricorn is the sign of the monopoly. So we've got like the energy of monopolies, governments, banking, insurance. Let's put pharma in there as well, big pharma, everything that feeds the mechanism of what we call Western lifestyle. Only it didn't just go Western, it went Eastern as well. And then Jupiter is the other character, and he's the media person. He's the celebrities. Jupiter is the planet that is far and wide, and it's like an idea worth spreading or a virus worth sharing. You know, like Jupiter, sorry to say it like that, but, you know, Jupiter shares things, transmits things, and pushes things out. So you had all three of those. Now they were at 23, 24 degrees. And so this point is I think important. You know, it's almost like the COVID point, and anything that gets close to it or backs up towards it is almost coming back to the picture again. So what interests me about this Pluto retrograde, it starts at 0 degrees 22 in the sign of Aquarius. That's a symbol for it. This little R, by the way, with the arrow on the end, that's what we put after the symbol for the planets. That shows retrograde. And so actually, right now, Pluto is here at sort of just 0 degrees in the sign of Aquarius. That's Capricorn, that's Aquarius. It's right on the cusp, but just in the Aquarian side. And Pluto is slowly moving back. There's 30 degrees in each sign. So it's moving back 2 and a bit degrees into the sign of Capricorn. Now, you could say, well, 27, that's like 28 degrees, Louisa. You're talking about 23, 24 degrees. But what is quite interesting is literally just in the run up to Pluto going retrograde, which went active on the 1st of May 2023. Was it just before or literally just after there was information from Biden and information in the news that the CDC is now declaring that COVID is over, and that people can come back to the States without having jabs. And I think it's not that COVID is over, but the mandates are over. So it's like the control about the phenomenon is now over. So it's interesting, isn't it, that as Pluto is going backwards, and Pluto is very much about controls and taking power. Saturn is about managing the power. Jupiter is about expanding it all. So it's interesting that as Pluto goes retrograde, it's saying, oh, hang on a sec. Maybe it's time to relax that. So it's heading back until October the 11th. Now, when it heads back, it will get as close to this COVID point as it can. And it wouldn't surprise me if there's some re-emergence of it, or a re-emergence of the core message of it, because it's like, I always think that the birth charts, even though you could have millions of birth charts every second of every day, there are particular timestamps or energetic stamps. And if enough people around the world agree on them, then they almost have a life of their own. And one of the things that I noticed about the whole idea of, the start of COVID and the fact that it got into human consciousness so quickly, through celebrity endorsements and messages, through government and very worrying things. If you don't do this, you're going to kill grandma, which is absolutely, it brings up fear, which is another big theme of Pluto. There's all these different things which absolutely almost encapsulated our full attention, and it really got us. So that's why I think this chart is important. And I suspect that thereafter, every time one of these big planets comes over this point, it's going to reactivate the idea of the pandemic, the idea of the phenomenon again and again and again. Just like every time you have your birthday and the sun comes back to the moment it was in at the time of your birth, you're reminded of your existence. And so there are these like little sort of visual timestamps for us. So yeah, Pluto is going retrograde and it's moving back to that point. But during that time, it's also going out of the sign of Aquarius and back into Capricorn. And so there is a different feel. Aquarius is about creating this new world. It is about creating a new world with futurism, with AI, most likely. And I can talk more about the Pluto in Aquarius kind of symbology. And I've done a big recording about it, and you'll find it, like I said, on my Pluto playlist. It's got a very sort of different kind of feel to it. And it's going to bring about a very massive shift, I think, in society. But we're having a dip back into Capricorn. It's almost like, hang on, are we quite done with the Capricorn message yet? And if not, why not? And so what's happening right now, and this is the first Pluto retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, there's going to be another 20 whilst Pluto's in here. So it's also, pretty interesting to see what's going to happen. So yeah, we're re-examining the need for governments, banking, insurance, security, anything that's a status symbol, which is very much all about Capricorn. Housing, like when Pluto went into the sign of Capricorn in 2008, there was a housing crisis, making us worry about our survival again and our fears again. It's all Pluto stuff. And power, so how do we reform all this? So I actually think probably what's happening right now, and I see evidence of it, but I probably would, because I've got a bit of a listening for this kind of thing. I'm hearing more and more about the collapse of banks, and of course, as banks collapse, they will take down insurance companies, all sorts of security, all sorts of status. It will probably affect the housing market, and will undoubtedly affect governments. Now, before I go any further, I'm not sure if I can. So we're on to Mercury retrograde. There we go. Right. What I'm going to do is just see if there's any questions quickly before we go on. So we've got this lovely, I love this from Tabitha, confound, confuse, control. Yes, I do see those mechanisms in place when we're talking about how governments actually enable power. I mean, there's lots of different models for leadership. I have to say, I much prefer the model of leadership where you inspire and you share and you engage with people to bring about what is best for humanity. But I guess people who really want to have the ultimate power, they don't want everyone to have the same level of power with them. So it's easy to confound and confuse and control. I think it's fascinating that, again, you know, and I spoke about it yesterday, I think it's fascinating that we've got a coronation of a king that represents hundreds of years, maybe thousands, I don't know, but like hundreds of years of this idea that there is this ideal family that's going to lead us and lead us forwards at the time that, you know, Pluto's just going retrograde. It's first retrograde from the sign of Aquarius. Mercury's retrograde, and then we've got this great big full moon eclipse as well. You know, so I do think it's not just the corporations. Royalty will also be subject to the same kind of scrutiny. I do think it could be even like a lot of the old stuff comes up. Now, one of the things that I spoke about in my Pluto in Aquarius video was oh, crikey, what was I going to say? There was something very decisive that I was going to add in. Oh, I know. Yes, just as the last time Pluto went into the sign of Aquarius, we had the American Revolution. We also had the French Revolution. We also had the start of the Industrial Revolution. And also it was at the time that the first smallpox vaccine came out. So the time that Pluto was last in Aquarius was a time of revolution. And that is pretty important to realize. So it's a time when the old management, so to speak, were kind of cast out or thrown out. And why would you do that? Well, you'd only do that if you realized that it had been up to no good. And that when they had a bit of scrutiny, all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is looking like an old boys club. I don't think I want this anymore. And then there's this, and sorry to use like the idea of the old man's club, but there is this fresh kind of breeze that comes in, this kind of revolutionary energy that comes in, and then there's another shift. So just by looking at the old cycle, we can see that the new cycle is likely to bring in new technology, in particular vaccine technology. That's not to say we will necessarily want it or need it. God knows where it's going to take us. There's likely to be lots of health discoveries, in particular technological ones. There's likely to be a change. We can already see AI is coming in. So there's a lot of stuff. But whatever is coming in is likely to undermine what was and what we've been building on. So, you know, let's not talk so much about the governments and stuff anymore. And let's apply this to how it might affect you in your life and your psyche. And what are you like? What are you changing right now? So if I have a look at this chart, in fact, I'm going to make it bigger for you guys. If I can. That's not much bigger, is it? Never mind. I love this comment from Nubionette. It could be good if enough people cared to scrutinize. And that's the funny thing, isn't it, Nubionette? I think at times like this, there's almost like a fever pitch. And sometimes events have to take place for people to realize that there's something going on. You know, there's always like one key moment, and it'll be a key moment where all of a sudden somebody's security suddenly doesn't feel very secure, and all of a sudden they wake up as if they've been in this dream, and all of a sudden they can absolutely see clearly what's been happening in front of their own eyes. But it's like we're all under a spell of some sort. And so it does feel like there is a wake-up call coming. I absolutely believe that. And Tabitha is also saying neurotechnology is on the cards. I'm reading The Battle for Your Brain. Yeah, I believe people have been battling for that for a long time and have probably already made massive leaps forward in that. I'm sure there's all these horrible programs going on analyzing us and our potentials and this, that, and the other. I don't doubt that, which is why I think we need to antidote that with our own heartbeat, our own love, our own like human sovereign energy. I do think that can actually outweigh everything. I actually think, and I may be foolish for thinking this, but you'll find everything on the internet will be in defiance of what I'm saying. It would be no, there's definitely no science to prove that. But I actually think we are very, very powerful beings, all of us. And I think once we start to believe in ourselves and believe in our power and know that we can look after ourselves and we can find our own answers and we can find ways to work together and we can come back into our sovereignty and realize that it actually matters, that if you don't take an effort, make an effort to be present in your life each and every day, that other people will take that presence and they will make their presence felt. So anyway, it's just my thoughts. But I'm just like a stay-at-home mum that has a lot of time. Actually, I don't have any time on my hands. But anyway, I do like to think deeply about these things, as you might have realized. Anyway, how is this going to affect us? Well, let's just have a look at what the themes are for Pluto when Pluto goes retrograde, and then look at where it will be as it reactivates. So on the day that Pluto went retrograde, which was on the 1st of May, Pluto was in this lovely trine with the moon and Ceres. The moon and Ceres are in exactly the same space. Now, it's kind of fascinating because Ceres is one of these, she's also known as Demeter or Mother Nature. And with a conjunction with the moon, it's really, really mother energy. Beware of mum, because if Pluto messes with mum, the mums are going to come and rip Pluto's balls off. I kid you not. So I won't be at all surprised if during this time, as Pluto goes retrograde, more and more mums wake up and start to take control. I really do think that. And no doubt some sneaky old government will label them as some kind of domestic terrorist like they do. But I think, mum power is going to get quite strong. I think mums are probably the first defense because they're always on the lookout to make sure their little precious babies aren't being attacked. So yeah, I think the mums are going to wake up quite quickly, especially Earth mums. It's in the sign of Virgo. And I also think there's a strong, if you look at the mythology of Ceres and Pluto, there's definitely a lot to do with kidnapping Persephone, or Proserpina, as she's also known, which was Ceres's daughter. So in mythology, Ceres got very, very fed up when she found out her daughter had been kidnapped. So it wouldn't surprise me if themes like that, you keep your hands off my children. I think children are going to be a big theme. The moon also represents children in some respects. So I think in this retrograde motion, we may find out a lot more about children, how to protect children, and how to ensure that they don't get captured. And it's interesting, Tabitha, what you were saying about the whole neurotechnology and brain waves and this, that, and the other. I think children are also captured. I mean, our kids do use technology. I'd be lying if I said they didn't. I mean, they are growing up in a technological age. So we don't want to disable them by not being able to understand what's going on around them. But I suspect there are all sorts of little plans and little catches that are trying to capture the imagination and the awareness and the presence of our children. So I think that's going to be a massive theme. Other things, now Pluto is always currently in our lifetime is always going to be in a sextile to Neptune. So I'm not really going to comment on that. But what's more important is this square to the North Node and a square to Jupiter. So as we're going into this retrograde, it is as we are reviewing and kind of considering and reforming and surrendering, because Pluto does represent how we die in some respects. It's like we die to our ego. There is this theme that we are kind of going back and we're considering and reforming how we thrive. So like Pluto in a square to the North Node is like, where are we controlling our life so much to try and be on our karmic journey? It's like, where are you trying to control things so much that you're stopping your karmic journey? Where are your fears about living the life you're supposed to live? Where are your fears of it not happening holding you back? I really think that's going to be a massive theme. It's interesting, isn't it? Because like some of the old material of Nassim Haramein and Greg Braden, they talk about the waveforms of love versus the waveforms of fear. And I don't know which ones I'm drawing out, but there's a difference in them. And I think the waveforms of love actually are more up and down, I think. I think they activate more in us, but there's a difference in the way our brains work when we're being frightened and shocked versus when we're being loving. And so it really wouldn't surprise me if we come up close and personal with our personal fears and then realize, hang on, am I being tortured here? Am I being tormented through the media and through celebrity news and all these different distractions? Is my mind being captured to control me? So I think we'll all come to that, or a lot of us will come to that conclusion and realize, okay, we need to be really conscious about sowing love and being in love and sharing and connecting, even if it's painful to connect, even if we're connecting with people that for the last 3 years or so we've actually been kind of diametrically opposed to. We need to connect. We need to find those ways and not be frightened of each other. We need to find our ways to engage and to engage first rather than to judge and to blame. And so I think that's going to be huge. Pluto in a square to Jupiter is also showing how control can get out of hand. So control mechanisms can get almost violent at times. So we will be looking at where violence has been perpetrated towards us, but also where we've been the perpetrators of violence. And, you know, most people probably aren't being violent in the way they're living their lives, but actually on closer inspection we might realize that, you know, when we see ourselves as different to others, and, you know, when we maybe judge others, we might realize that it's almost like an act of violence. So we will be examining ourselves, so much so that I think we will come to the conclusion that you know, maybe we've been abused somehow, and that it's time to throw off the shackles of the sort of corporatocracy. It's interesting. I saw so this is going to be a little bit longer than half an hour, it seems, because I'm feeling quite chatty. I saw a video of a TikToker from China she did a lovely little happy, woohoo, look at me, I've got a chip in my arm. Now I can put my arm up to get into my apartment. I can pay, I just put my arm up. Everything I want, all my food, boom, there it comes. You know, she was so delighted because she had this chip, and there were so many benefits to having this chip. All of her medical information was kept on that chip. She was delighted. You know, if she was in an accident, people would be able to read her chip and know exactly what she needs. So she was really like talking about it on TikTok, really, really happy. And then she something went wrong and she went and spoke about it on TikTok. And then there's another TikTok of her saying, oh my goodness, my country decided to cancel my chip. And now I can't get into my flat. I've got no money. My healthcare has been cancelled, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, just a month ago, I was recording something about Pluto in Aquarius and saying we need to be really careful of having everything on this AI promise. The big promise of AI is going to save and revolutionize our lives, until we realize that all our eggs are in one basket. And it just takes maybe Mercury retrograde for everything to go wrong, and your whole data, your whole life just gets deleted, including all of your resources, everything you need. Or it could be turned off at will by someone who's been a bit sort of spiteful and wanting to control you. So these are things that I think they're going to come up. Yeah, so a lot of change. Now, when it goes direct on the 11th of October, there's a different theme. And what I see is a lot more empowerment. So we've got this lovely trine between Pluto and Uranus, showing that we're ready to take action. We're ready to transform ourselves and be really quite independent. We've got more of an independent mind frame. And just because I say, we're more independent and wanting to do things our way, that doesn't preclude the idea that we can do it together. We can all be independent together. What I mean is, it's more like, I don't need your controls. I've got this, and I've got this, and I've got all of my brothers and sisters by my side, so it's that kind of independence, which is the spirit of, I'm guessing, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution. So yeah, that spirit is coming back into us. Then we've also got a square with Mars. Now that is pretty bloody. I won't, it can be quite challenging, Mars and Pluto in a square, but it also gives us the fortitude and the determination to not give up. So I do think there is this rousing energy coming back into us around the 11th of October. And of course, like I said, well, actually, I don't know if I did say, this is the surprise bit of info, and that is, yeah, I did say, yeah, when Pluto goes back to its end spot, it is right in the place that the American chart for the incorporation of the USA, the 4th of July, 1776 at 5:10 p.m. in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There we have it. It's back to that spot, and that's where it starts moving forwards from. So I'm expecting a pretty big sense of maybe revolt, but definitely a revolution of some sort. But I mean, by revolution, I don't mean bloody necessarily, though it could go that way. And I'm seeing that happening around the world when you see the photos. But I am sure that there's also lots of loving revolutions taking place that the media is not sharing with us. But I think things are going to start turning around. So the last thing I want to do then is just show how it might show up in your chart and how you might work with it. But before I do that, let's just see if there are any other comments that are useful. So I did like that. I'm going to put that on again. If it could be good if enough people cared to scrutinize. I love the cut of your jib there. Carl is joining us saying, flipping missed you again. Here now. and Zoe Kelly's universe. We are domestic terrorists. Well, I do think I'm a little bit on that side myself. Obviously I would be, because that's how I'm choosing to read the signs. I mean, there are two sides to every coin, aren't there? So for every control that comes on and appears to pin us down, at the same time it frees so many of us, because it has to get really strong for us to be able to flip and see it. So I think they all go hand in hand. And this is an interesting one. Do you see a guiding energy in this at all? I do. I really do. I don't necessarily think it's just the energy of one person or one religion necessarily. I just think it's the spirit of humanity returning. I don't think you can completely kill love. I just don't think you can kill love, and love animates us. And I guess I see it a little bit like a yo-yo. When we've got a son that's just learning to use a yo-yo, and he's spinning it out, and the yo-yo goes as far as it can on its string, and then all of a sudden it has to come back in, and it gets pulled back in. And I think our love has been crushed. Like a human spirit has been crushed. It's been stamped on. It's been fried with all sorts of wavelength technologies, put it that way, all sorts of weather altering things, all sorts of food things. Humans have taken quite a lot on their shoulders, to be fair. We've come in with an overload of it, and it's almost like it can't continue. And I think the animating force within us, call it what you like, universal energy, love energy, God energy, the human spirit, the power of you, Zoe, the power of me, the power of Woolly Bee, Carl Munson, Tabitha, Nubianette, everyone listening today, Gillian, if you're still here, and who else? Sarah Taylor, I'm sure there's other people, everyone. It's the power, it's awakening within us all. Is it being guided? I don't know. Is it just what we're doing? And I've got so many other theories too. So that's such a good question. Thank you. And Willie B saying, I'm ready for it. Throw the tea into the harbor again. Fantastic. So I think we're all on the same page here, that we're ready for a change, right? So anyway, this is a chart. And I'm just picking out some random charts of clients and things. So in this chart here, Pluto is going retrograde from this person's 6th house, which is about work, and how they organize themselves, how they get into routine, how they become normal. In fact, the 6th house is very much about being normal. And this person really hasn't been playing normal at all in their life. And Pluto has recently gone into their 6th house, but is now backing into their 5th. Now, Pluto has been in the 5th house for most of this person's adult life. And the 5th house is a place of clowning around. It's the place of creativity. It's the place of playing. It's the place of having children. And it's the place of romance and new beginnings. It's the place of the groin. It's the place of the womb. And so what's happening here is this person is kind of has gone into the big world and kind of grown up, and is now just putting their attention back into that creativeness, just to see if there's something creative about themselves that they've kind of left behind. And they're thinking, okay, well, how have I used creativity in such a way that it's killed me? It's almost controlled me. And how has it stopped me from progressing? What do I need to address in terms of my creative spirit before I can move into this area of being a little bit grown up? So that's, one interpretation. Here's another client's chart, and this is, this Pluto energy is really, really strong. So Pluto is currently in their 1st house in the sign of Aquarius here, and it's backing to this point. And so this 1st house is about their personal identity, and they've been quite serious for quite some time, because Pluto's gone over their ascendant. So, that marks a really big shift in their life, lots of massive changes in terms of how they think of themselves, in terms of how they, in terms of how they want to be seen and taken seriously or not. And so they've recently, as Pluto went into the sign of Aquarius, it would have lightened their sense of themselves. It would have lightened and given a new sense of their individuality and how they can express themselves. And right now, they're just going back into that little place of safety. Maybe I should be a bit more serious, a bit more businesslike. But actually, this new me is calling. So that's a bit of a dilemma that may well come out. And they might realize that, they kept onto their corporate persona because it felt safe. And yet that safety controlled them. And so it's almost like, how can I let go of that safe persona and start to arrive and kind of be really who I am? So, and then finally, just have a look at here again. Currently the Pluto in this person's chart is right on the cusp here, just in the 11th house. So this person is, and has been for a long time, been learning about how friendships and networks and co-creating has brought benefits and definitely a status shift, but how it's also been very controlling. And so, they are on a bit more of a Pluto mission, because not only is it changing signs here, but later when Pluto goes forward as of January next year, back into the sign of Aquarius, it will then go into their 12th house. So Pluto is really sort of shifting a lot here. So this person is probably thinking in terms of their friendships and how much trust they can have in their old style of friendships, even though there is a new sort of network beckoning, there's a new tribe for them. So there you have it. Pluto really does show up in all sorts of guises for us, and brings in a lot of surprises too. So, oh my God, it's almost 50 minutes. I'm going to have to shift out of this. So yeah, Willie B said, I'm ready for it. Gillian's also saying, haha, not a tea fan. Throwing it all in the harbour sounds like a great idea though. Yeah, count me in for a glass of red. And then we're talking. So anyway, there you have it. That's my thoughts for Pluto retrograde. It is really, like, in terms of you, think, where am I controlling my life? You know, like, where are the things that I think, God, if I don't have control of this, I may not survive. I mean, I'll tell you a secret. It's not really a secret because lots of people have seen my chart now. But for me, Pluto has been going through my third house for ages. And the third house is about finding the right community, finding the right environment, finding the right location to settle. And it has been, well, really almost 20 years here. And, you know, during this time I've wandered so much. And so, you know, at some level I'm wanting to find that secret for myself too. And also realizing that when you do get into a community, you then also get trapped. So who knows what's going to happen, but I always think it's quite fun to examine ourselves. So there you have it. The second one sounded like me. I'm trying. Bless you, newbie net. Right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and join me tomorrow. I think I'm going to talk about how we can create the right or find the right charts to go dating and to get married. So I'll give you 3 steps to finding a really good chart to meet someone, to and not just dating, it could be for friendships and for setting up a good feeling place to meet and connect. So anyway, take care. Thanks a lot for joining me today, and hopefully see you again real soon. Bye for now.